Now, before we start advertising or hiring salespeople, setting a price or even finalizing what our product will do and what it will look like, we need to decide to whom we are going to sell. What group of people are going to be the best group on which to focus our marketing efforts? We call that our target market. The process of choosing a target market is more than just throwing a dart at the board, however. So the target marketing strategy consists of three separate yet very much interrelated steps. First of all, the marketers divide the market into segments based on needs and on other customer characteristics. And then the marketer selects one or more of the segments that they're going to serve. And then finally, we do what's called positioning. And that's going through various activities to try to get the image and the thoughts about that product positioned properly in the minds of the consumers and prospects. And so for each of the segments that's chosen, the marketer develops products that specifically meet the needs of that selected group, and they customize all other aspects of the marketing mix as well in a manner that most effectively and efficiently sells the product to the segment. So this is an important sequence that you should remember. You'll do this process in your marketing plan project that you're doing in this class. Now, segmentation is the process of dividing a larger market into smaller pieces based on one or more meaningful shared characteristics. Note that we use segmentation in choosing a target, but by itself, segmentation isn't really target marketing. It's the starting point in the process. So in a minute, we'll talk about ways we can do segmentation. But first, let's get an important concept under our belts here, and that is the concept of market fragmentation. This is similar, but it's a different term from market segmentation. In market fragmentation, we look at it from the perspective of the buyer. And these are the diverse kinds of interests that naturally divide themselves into groups with distinct needs and wants. In market segmentation, marketers divide up the market, and that may or may not match the fragments. So you see examples of this with toothpaste here. And so in this case, we see various ways that customers can kind of break themselves down into groups in terms of their likes and dislikes, wants and needs. And then Crest decides whether they are going to respond with a specific product to be able to meet those particular needs that the market has fragmented itself into. And so as a result of market fragmentation, mass marketing efforts are not as effective as they were 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And so to just have a single kind of toothpaste is not going to be really that effective. Market fragmentation and the reduced effectiveness of those mass marketing efforts underscores the importance of having a true target marketing strategy. Targeting everyone is really not an option anymore. We're too particular. We've learned that marketers who care to go to the trouble can cater to our particular wants. So remember when you're differentiating in these terms that fragmentation is something from that consumers initiate, perhaps in response to suggestions that marketers give them, or it may just be ways that they fragment themselves based on their own observations of their needs. Segmentation, on the other hand, is a process that we do as marketers, perhaps in response to the fragmentation that we see consumers doing. There are three primary ways that we segment. They are demographics, psychographics, and behavior. Let's look first at demographics. Demographic variables are statistics that measure some observable aspects of a population. Note the word observable. These are generally things that you can see or that you can understand with a little more digging, like age. This is how most market segmentation is done, and it can be very appropriate and useful depending on the product and how your competitors choose to deal with the market. So you may segment by gender, for example, and have a product that's targeted to boys or targeted to girls. You may have different products for boys and girls. And so all of these are different ways that we can segment. Age is often used for segmenting. If you were born in the early 80s, this Generation Y, or millennials, is you. We'll look at this list in detail in class, but I'd like for you to look it over now. You may want to pause and just kind of scan through this slide here. How do you fit? How do you think that you fit here? Let's look at this one characteristic, this area of digital literacy. What do you think this could mean to us as marketers that are trying to reach people like you? According to the research that's been done, people in your age group prefer to use digital means of communications. They get all their information and most of their socialization from the internet. So what would this mean to us as marketers? Think about that, and then think about some of the other things that you see on this slide as well. The second way that we segment is by psychographics. Now this is interesting and very helpful for certain kinds of products. Psychographic segments market in terms of shared attitudes, interests, and opinions, as well as lifestyles. Now, the best known general psychographic segmentation system is named VALS, which stands for Values and Lifestyles. Here's the definition of it. You can take a look at this. And then here's an example of this VALS kind of a categorization. And the VALS system segments U.S. consumers into 8 unique groups based on, first of all, their primary motivation, and then secondly, their level of resources and innovation. You'll need to get to know this VALS system at a basic level for one of the assignments that you're going to be doing. The final approach that we use to segmenting is behavior. And we'll discuss this more in class, but for now, just understand that this is talking about buying behavior, such as the level of usage of our product. Non-users, light users, heavy users, this kind of thing. Now we're going to talk about another concept that I think would be interesting to you and help us to understand. So as we look at our segments and we choose which one we want to be our target, we have to think, is it just a target or is it multiple targets? In deciding how many segments that we want to go after, we need to consider an idea that's caught on in recent years, and that's this term called long-tail marketing. This has nothing to do with cats. In fact, it might be more useful for you to think of dinosaurs visually. Here's the idea. Firms can make money by selling small amounts of items that only a few people want. In other words, we're targeting small volume segments, provided that they sell enough of those different items. Now, some would say, and this is perhaps what your text says, that this is the opposite of segmentation. I really disagree with that. I think it is segmentation, and it's also targeting. It's just you're picking out a lot of targets to go after. And so this is another term that you want to make sure that you know, because it'll make you look smart in an interview when you're interviewing for a marketing job sometime, to ask your potential employer, so what do you think about long-tail marketing? Is this something that your company is going after? Or maybe you might say it appears that you're kind of using a long-tail marketing concept, because I notice that you've got a lot of different products that you're offering to the marketplace. Now we get to the next part of the process where we're going to actually choose segments. So how do we pick those segments? Well, we start by evaluating the segments. Are the segments usable from a marketing standpoint? In class, we'll discuss how we do that evaluation. Just for now, you need to know that that's the first step in the process. Then we create profiles that describe what those segments are. Now, a useful way to do this is to come up with some generic names and short descriptions for those. Have you ever heard of a soccer mom? That's kind of a particular segment. Finally, we choose our targeting strategy, and that's a more detailed discussion that we'll save for class. Now, we've broken into segments, and we have chosen one or more segments that we're going to have as our target or targets. Now we're going to try to get our product into the minds of those individuals in our target market, and to try to get them thinking about the product in a way that's going to be favorable. We call this positioning, the process by which marketers seek to influence how a particular product is perceived in the minds of customers relative to competing offerings. So what do you want customers to think of when they think of your product in comparison to others? Do you want them to think, well, it's a very high quality product? Maybe you want them to think it's a cool product. Maybe you want them to think that it's the best value. So then we look at the idea of some basic positioning concepts. How are we going to position the brand? When we talk about brand positioning, that's designing the company's offer and the image so that it has this distinct and valued place in the customer's minds. And so what we're trying to do is to find that proper location in the minds of consumers and allow the consumers to think about the product with the right perspective. And so we're going to do some activities that will help us to do that. A lot of that's going to be advertising, and we'll talk about some of the different elements that we incorporate there. One of the things that we can use is the perceptual map. These is a great visual aid to describe where products or brands are located in consumers' minds relative to competing brands. The perceptual map can sometimes help marketers understand where they want to position a new brand. You might look into a particular segment and say, wow, the market's really crowded in that category. Or you might say there's only a few entrants into that category, and your feeling might be that they're fairly weak, and so you see it as an opportunity. Generally speaking, underserved kinds of segments represent great opportunities as long as the market segment in question meets those tests of viability. So that's the basics of targeting and positioning. I encourage you to read the text and get some good information from that. That will really help you to contribute in class when we discuss this in detail. So good luck on the quiz, and I'll see you in class.